Welcome to the Angels Win podcast with former Angels broadcaster Victor Rojas, featuring Jeff Stoddart and Chuck Richter. And now it's time to talk about some baseball. Victor, take it away.
Thanks a lot, Mattingly. It is episode number 5 of the Angels Win podcast. I'm Victor Rojas along with Chuck Richter. We are so glad that you could join us. Jeff Stoddart has we have finally approved his 2-week vacation, and he is not with us this week. But he obviously we all have a ton of stuff that we've all been going through the last couple of weeks. With Chuck's daughter getting married last weekend, my son getting or graduating this week, and Jeff's got family in Colorado, so it's just been kind of a hectic week. So we apologize for having to skip 1 week, but it was for good reasons. It's as Chuck's beautiful daughter was wed last weekend, and Chuck, I would imagine that it was just as it was for me several years ago when I gave away my daughter Brianna. That it was amazing to witness the ceremony and be able to hand her off to a great young man.
It certainly was. There was a bunch of emotions, and we were also, praying for no rain that day. The forecast called for thunderstorms, and mind you, this was an outdoor venue, so not a raindrop, and just a beautiful ceremony. And I couldn't be happier for my daughter. Everybody that attended that wedding said that they had an absolute blast.
That's awesome.
And then they went on their honeymoon the very next day to Jamaica and had a great time there. They just got back yesterday.
As long as everyone has fun, that's a testament to you and your family for being such great hosts. So that's awesome. The pictures looked amazing. And by the way, before I forget, cheers to you and to all of our listeners and watchers on YouTube. We do this every show before every show. A little cheers to everyone. I'm drinking Western Sun vodka. And I'm sure Chuck has got some sort of bourbon going on. What you got?
Eagle Rare.
Eagle Rare.
Yeah.
You can't cheers without taking a sip. So, and to Jeff, who's not with us, here.
Yeah.
Let's see. A lot to unpack over the next 45 minutes or thereabouts. And if this is the first time listening to our show, it's kind of there's structure, but there's not. It's a little bit wheels off. We usually like to go back in time to see what the Angels did the last week, but in this case, it's the last 2 weeks, including through Sunday's victory against the Minnesota Twins. And then we'll talk about a bunch of little different things today. We're going to talk Jared Walsh's return to the lineup, Taylor Ward's struggles, to maybe perhaps a little bit of Shohei Ohtani mixed bag in the month of May, although he had a pretty decent start on Sunday against the Minnesota Twins to wrap up that victory. And then we'll get into what the Angels look like the following week, which for the Angels remains at home. They've got the Red Sox for 3, and then the Miami Marlins coming in for 3. And then we'll get to our, we've got a ton of mail to kind of get to. We've had a chance to kind of let that catch up a little bit. I'm sure fans are probably infuriated with, especially on a day-to-day basis with the Angels fan base and some of the things that we've seen. They fire off the emails, and some are timely, some are not, but we will do our best to get as many as possible. So that's usually the premise of our show. You can find us on iTunes Podcast, Spotify, iHeart, and Amazon, also on our YouTube channel. We will send that link out via social media here after the show, as soon as we record. So we'll go back in time, if you will, because let's cover the last 2 weeks for this Angels ball club. And goes back to really to May 8th, right? They were in Houston. This was after they lost the series to the Texas Rangers in Arlington. They lost to the Astros 2 of 3. They went to Cleveland after an off day. They lost 2 of 3 to the Guardians, and then went home. They went to Baltimore, split the series against Baltimore. That was a 4-game set, and then just took 2 of 3 against the Minnesota Twins. And the weird thing, Chuck, if you just kind of zoom the lens out, just going back to that May 5th, they, for a pretty good continuation there, won the first game of the series, lost the next 2. In the Orioles series, they won the finale. And in the series that just completed this past weekend against Minnesota, won the first game, lost the second one. They were down 1-0, came back and picked up the victory. But overall, when you start looking at the end of May, and we're coming up on the end of May here, it seems as if unfortunately, we are kind of where we are. This is a very good 500 ball club. I mean, I don't think that's I don't think that's overstating it. I think there are a lot of issues with this team that still need to be worked out. And going into Sunday's game, they revamped the bullpen what they needed to because of arms. They added three guys to that bullpen, including Aaron Loup coming off the injured list. But overall, Chuck, I'll just ask you, as far as the last couple of weeks, to me, I haven't seen any consistency where it gives you the hope of, all right, these guys are on the verge of turning the corner and running off 8, 9, 10 victories in a row, or 10 of 12, 10 of 14, something like that, to kind of get that momentum going into the summer.
Yeah, we've been waiting for a long time, Victor, for just the entire club to just fire on all cylinders. And it's something that here we are getting towards the end of May here, and it still hasn't clicked. It still hasn't happened. To your point, they are a very good, just slightly above 500 team right now. They should be better. There's some warts, of course, with the bullpen outside of, Estevez and Moore and maybe Davinsky now. He's looked really good. The starting pitching can't go deep on some starts outside of Ohtani today. And then you got that amazing start by Detmers over the weekend where he was just cruising. And, and maybe we can get to this later on, but I thought it was a little too early to pull him. I say the way he was striking everybody out in that game, 12 strikeouts, let him finish the inning.
Yeah.
Of course the bullpen came in, and Herget has been terrible this year. He's definitely not the guy we saw last year. Let him finish the inning. And it wasn't the case. And, gave up 3 runs when he was like an ace the entire ball. But the thing is that it's like one game you get good pitching, you don't get hitting with running. Yeah. We're not hitting with runners in scoring position. We're not getting the offense, right? It's like, and then you got games where the starting pitching's great, the hitting's great, but then the bullpen coughs it up. It's like, come on, guys. I mean, I think we've had maybe 2 comfortable games where we could just recline in the recliner, put our feet up, and say, oh, it feels so good. We could just relax and not take any freaking anxiety meds, and
yeah.
So that it is what it is. But, you look at this team on paper, you look at the depth, and they should be better. And hopefully they will get better. We'll talk more later about how that maybe can happen.
But should be better by what standards? I guess that's the question, right? I mean, should they be better than last year's team? Well, yeah, I mean, because the depth says it's, your 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th man are much better than they were on paper than last year, right? The guys that you're running out there. It doesn't help that Anthony Rendon's on the injured list again. Dealing with a groin injury.
Yeah.
You've had some injuries on the pitching staff as well. I mentioned Aaron Loup is back. And so I think that's the biggest question. Is like, they're better based on what? Like, what is the baseline that you are, you're really matching this team up against? Because I think that's the one thing that stands out to me. It's like, I think we're all still kind of clinging to hope that things will click, and you hear it from, whether it was Perry, I believe in an interview just a couple of days ago, or Phil Nevin, and talking about, they see some things on the defensive side that they think that they could, tweak. Physical errors are always going to happen, but the mental stuff that continues to happen, I don't know that you can fix it, right? Because sometimes guys are who they are. And there is a reason why they are 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th man on the roster, is because they're good or good enough. They're just not those guys that are going to lock it down on the defensive side, especially from a mental perspective, on an everyday basis. And I think when you have all of these, I think you said warts, right? The starting rotation besides Ohtani, and Ohtani has been mid as far as the month of May, other than Sunday. Sorry, he had a 5.6 ERA, 6 home runs allowed in the month of May. And we joked about it, I think, in episode 4, that he's become pedestrian, if you will, which is still very good. But I mean, that ERA is 5.6, giving up a lot of hits. He had a wonderful start against Minnesota. And so hopefully that's a turnaround. And I can talk about the Ohtani start on Sunday against Minnesota. as someone just watching it, and I don't want to digress, but I'm going to, is how he does not live off his fastball more so than all of the breaking stuff that he likes to throw. And it's slider, and it's not that stupid sweeper crap. Please stop saying sweeper. Holy crap. It's a slider, and it's ad nauseum. I'm telling you, do sweeper at an Angels broadcast as a drinking game. You're drunk before the third batter comes to the plate, especially when Shohei's batting.
Yeah, no doubt.
But here's a guy that splitter, breaking ball, slider, fastball. This is a fastball that is above average. This is 97 plus, and it's on you in a hurry. And I don't know why he is so fascinated with throwing so many more breaking balls. At least that was my perception on Sunday's start against the Minnesota Twins. Still worked out fine. I don't think the Twins are a very good team. I don't think any team in the American League Central Division is any good as you compare to the East or the West. But that's neither here nor there. You still got to go out there and perform, and I think Shohei certainly did that. But when you look at that rotation, it's nice. You knew you had some issues going into the season with the back end because you're kind of who's going to show up on the back end. But the rotation as a whole, as a collective, has been besides Shohei, right? And besides the little hiccups in May. The bullpen has been except a couple of guys that have shown up. Estevez, I think it looks like he gains confidence with every single outing, which is it's good to have somebody to lock it down. But when you're getting guys that aren't working deep into the games, you need that bridge, right? You have that bridge from the starters to that closer, especially if you've got a closer that's feeling good about himself, got the confidence going, and he's starting to lock it down. You need that bridge to be fairly consistent. And then on top of that, you got an offense that's not clicking on all cylinders yet, consistently. We know that they can score runs, but they just haven't done it consistently, especially with men in scoring position. And defensively have all these issues. So when someone says, well, they're better on paper, better than what? I'll leave it to you. It's like, what are they supposed to be better than?
Well, if you're comparing to last year, which I don't think we should, right? I mean, because last year they were just a train wreck. There was a lot of injuries. You talk about what the thing I point to this year is depth, right?
Right.
We lose Rendon, we can slot in a Gio or Urshela, right? Last year we had to slot in Jack Mayfield. I mean, my God. I mean,
that wasn't pretty.
No, it wasn't. And I'll tell you this, in getting to the defense, I have seen an improvement lately from the defense. Renjifo's looked better. Zach Neto has solidified that defense up the middle. He looks like a bona fide all-star defensively. And the bat's going to come. He had a couple hits today. When that bat comes, I mean, look out. He's going to be, in my opinion, a perennial all-star. But, the depth, right? Again, Taylor Ward, and we will get into this later. I don't want to touch on it too much. Taylor Ward's been awful. Slot in Mickey Moniak. He's looked incredible, and we'll get to that. The depth is so much better this year, and that's why the Angels are at least hovering, and they've had terrible games. They've had so many leads in these games that they've lost. And it's frustrating. A lot of that is because of the defense and because of the bullpen. That bridging to the late inning closers has been terrible.
Yeah.
And so I know on the last episode that we never got to because we had all kinds of things going on, we were going to talk about Ryan Tepera. He's been terrible. Aaron Loop, apparently he's rediscovered what he had, the magic he had, when he was with the Mets before he came to the Angels. We'll see. The jury's still out on that because Tepera also said, well, I've rediscovered, my way. And I'm sorry, but when you're a relief pitcher, and you're throwing 91, 92 miles an hour and you don't got a knockout pitch, you're going to get tagged. Yeah. I mean, sorry. But comparing to here's the thing. If the Angels can stay where they're at and then finally just fire on all cylinders, it looks like the defense is coming around. The offense is much better than in recent years. The starting pitching, I still believe that Tyler Anderson and Patrick Sandoval Reid Detmers, who's looked great, but then he'll have that one inning. Same with Patrick Sandoval. Patrick Sandoval drives me fucking nuts. He has an error or a ball goes through the infield where he thinks maybe an infielder should have gotten it, and he's shaking his head and he's pouting and whining, on the mound. And it's just like kind of reminds me of John Lackey when he used to do that. But at least John Lackey would like he would actually get out of the inning. It's kind of frustrating. And that's no knock on Patrick Sandoval. He's a great pitcher, and I think he'll come around. But it's frustrating to see that for me personally. just moping around the mound.
I get it. And, Patrick's, he certainly turned the corner last year. And, don't want to turn this into a Patrick Sandoval show. His one issue has always been really how efficient can he be early on?
Yeah.
And by that is limiting the number of pitches thrown per inning so that you can work deeper in games. But that's something that has been an issue for a lot of Angels pitchers, right? From a starter's perspective. Shohei could go and have a 9-pitch inning. He could throw a 22-pitch inning with the walk and 3 strikeouts. And, and I'm not comparing the two as apples to apples because Shohei clearly is at a different level than anybody else on that team from an offensive end, from a pitching perspective. But I think that's the one thing with Patrick. I think I hope he doesn't fall back into the trap of where he was a couple of years ago of nibbling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you give up a couple of knocks and then you become tentative. I hope that's not the case. Apparently, maybe he was ill earlier this week, and that's why he didn't have the
fastball
on his pitches. But that being said, very seldom will a starting pitcher be 100% with all of his pitches clicking at 100% for 25 to 30 starts. It's just unrealistic. I mean, there's some outliers out there that are capable of doing. Those are Cy Young type seasons. So he better learn how to pitch when he's not at his best. And that's not by throwing a lot of pitches, not by nibbling, but using your secondary pitches. It's okay to live off your fastball. Maybe you don't have your best fastball. Who cares? You've got to still locate. You still got to get hitters out. You still got to keep guys off balance. And that's not just Patrick. It's any pitcher, right? That's just any pitcher. So I hope it's not being used as an excuse, much like the pitch tipping for Suarez and mechanical adjustment for Loop or whatever whoever, right? It's like just say what it is and move on. Look, he had a bad outing. He's got to stop. He's got to be more aggressive, whatever the case. Just from a fan's perspective, I just wish there was a little bit more transparency and just knock off the BS, right? Because it's like, come on. It's like, he wasn't feeling good. Well, if he wasn't, or he wasn't feeling good earlier in the week, and if he didn't have his best stuff while he was warming up, then it's up to Matt Wise, the pitching coach, to tell him, hey, man, I know it doesn't look like you, and you should know that. Your catcher should know who's warming you up in the bullpen. Your pitching coach should know who's down there with you. Hey, you don't look like you have that little oomph, that little extra on the fastball. You might want to try this. Let's just kind of game plan it now so that when you get on the field, it's not like you try to sit there and try to rear back and you still don't have it. And all of a sudden, the wheels start to fall off very quickly. 3 runs in the first inning for Patrick. Now, he did settle down after that. Yeah. But all of a sudden, you're down 3-0, right? And so those are the things that I wish they would be a little bit more transparent about, a little bit more honest about, just nip it in the bud, as opposed to just kind of continuously, I don't know, it seems like it's a layer of an excuse as to this is why this didn't happen. No, sometimes you sucked that day. It's okay to say we sucked that day. No excuses.
Yeah.
We didn't catch the ball. We didn't throw the ball. We didn't throw strikes. It's okay to say that. Then frickin' say it. Don't continue to layer things. And I'm solely as a fan with excuse after excuse after excuse. All right, so that is the last 2 weeks of the Angels. I mean, you could dissect it left and right. The one thing that did happen this week that I think everyone was excited to see, you mentioned the defense. The defense will get better with Jared Walsh at first base. There's no doubt about it. I remember one of the early conversations I had with Perry after he got the job. We were talking about the roster and this and that. And I said, in Jared Walsh, I think the confidence that he has offensively is going to carry over. I don't know what type of player he's going to be offensively, but I think he is an everyday guy. And at first base, he's a perennial Gold Glove type first baseman defensively.
I think so.
There's no hands down. That's what I said to him. And I think that's what he's proven out. He had the All-Star season, regressed a little bit offensively last year. Maybe the issue, the health issues that he was having that obviously catapulted him to the injured list this year and having to go to Utah. But it's great to see this young man who really battled through some adversities and kind of gain success at the major league level, attain success at the major league level, and then all of a sudden have to kind of reboot to have him back in that clubhouse and back at first base defensively for the Angels.
Yeah, there's no doubt that the Angels have needed Jared Walsh back. His bat, I mean, he crushed it in Salt Lake in the week that he was there. He looks like he's ready offensively. He finally got a knock today. But to your point, his defense at first base. I mean, let's face it. I mean, Gio Urshela is not a first baseman. He's been playing first base. We've been having guys play kind of out of position, and that's a problem.
Hey, listen, real quick. Gio is what he is at this stage of his career. He's a guy that you can plug and play as needed. First base, second, short if you need him at third. Is he an everyday third baseman? No. Is he an everyday shortstop? No. Second base? No. Yeah. First base? No. At a necessity, he can be. But I think that's when you get the best out of a guy like Gio Urshela, is when you are using him in the right spots.
Right.
Which helps the rest of the ball club.
Right. I mean, let's face it. He is good David Fletcher. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's a singles hitter. He's not putting up a big slugging percentage. He's not going to hit home runs. He is what David Fletcher was, 3-4 years ago, right? He's going to put the ball in play. I love the way he goes to all fields. And he's good defensively. He is. But to your point, I mean, but then you got a problem once Rendon comes back. What are we going to do? You got Walsh, you got Drury, you got Urshela, you got Neto, who, in my opinion, you should never take out of the lineup, and then you have Rendon. It's a good problem to have. And that's kind of where the point I was going to earlier, the depth has been mightily improved. And I don't think the Angels ever thought that they were going to have Neto as their starting shortstop in May. I mean, let's face it, coming into the season. And that's been huge for them.
I think they had to have factored a possibility, maybe not in May, but when you look at that roster, that 40-man roster, and the depth or lack thereof at the shortstop position.
Of a true shortstop, true.
A true shortstop, right. I think that's why you look at that draft last year and you sit there and go, okay, can this guy help us next year, let's say, if we're going to take him in the first round? Obviously, the answer was yes, or a resounding yes. Maybe it was a split decision and Perry wins out. But whatever the decision was, it's worked out, right? Because when Rendon is in the lineup, when he's in the lineup, it's him at third, it's Neto at short, and Walsh at first base every single day. I don't care. And if Rengifo or Drury or Urshela, and you want to rotate the second base, you want to match up, then so be it. Or Rendon needs a day off, or Urshela goes to third base, however you want to do it. But those three guys should be in your starting lineup every single day. I mean, they're without question. Because if Jared Walsh, if you expect him to be an impact guy for you, both offensively and defensively, he's got to play every day. Neto's going to play every day. Rendon, you're paying him too much money to not play every day.
Right.
So he has to play every day. So there's your second base situation there as far as how you rotate and then kind of give guys days off here and there.
Right. Maybe you give Walsh a day off against a tough lefty, right?
For sure. And definitely don't ask him to bunt in a crucial situation ever again. 0 sacrifice bunts for the Angels on the year, and you have a guy who's back in the big leagues for the first time since last year, and you're putting him in that situation. It just
that was terrible, and we'll get to that. That's one of our mailbag questions for later. But I agree with you. I mean, come on. Did he even bunt once when he was in Salt Lake on his rehab assignment? I doubt it.
Right. And you can't say that he's a good bunter based on what? BP? The first two pitches in your BP round is bunt one to third, bunt one to first, a good bunt. It's what is it? 57 mile per hour BP. I mean, I can still bunt at the BP or in BP, I should say. But anyways, we digress. So Walsh is the guy. I'm glad that he's back. It's great to see him because I love that kid. And I think he will absolutely help on the defensive side, and hopefully he gets that back going and can contribute to this ball club the rest of the season. Taylor Ward, on the other hand, he has struggled. What a season he had last year. He has regressed. And for whatever reason, I know we touched on it a couple of episodes ago, as far as when you look at his numbers month to month last year, there was 2 good months, and then there was a bad month, and a better month, and then a bad month. You hate to see that, because I root for that kid. I love Taylor Ward. He is a guy that I think could be a nice left fielder that's not going to hurt you and can add some thump to your lineup.
Yeah.
It's not working out, not getting the job done. Mickey Moniak has done a nice job since he's been there. Let's tap the brakes on, Mickey Moniak is I don't care that he was a one-time first overall pick. There's a lot of first-round picks, second-round picks, 30th round picks that don't work out. Let's let this play out before we start anointing Mickey Moniak the rookie of the year. He looks really good. He didn't look so good against Lopez on Sunday. He looked lost in those couple of at-bats with a couple of strikeouts. But I think defensively he adds something to you. There's a little spark to him. Left-handed batter. So there are some inklings of positive momentum, but it's just like sometimes you get that positive momentum and then you get popped in the chin because something dumb happens, and then you still hover at that 500 mark.
Yeah. The knock on Moniak has been that he can't hit an above average fastball from the scouting department. But, he looked good. He did good against the other
Lopez, yeah.
Another Lopez today.
Well,
and that was key.
Just on that setup alone, right? That second Lopez, the reliever, couldn't throw a breaking ball for a strike. And he fell behind 2-0 on Moniak. So as a hitter, I'm sitting there going, all right, he's probably going to throw me a fastball. I'm going to dial it up. And sure enough, he got it. Credit him. He did a great job of hitting. He made the adjustment there. And it was a big double that proved to be the game-winning hit. So it's like those are the things that you love. And then he almost made a spectacular, JB Shuck style catch in the left field corner. Just didn't close the glove to bring it back. But, hey, great effort. Just to think about how that inning played out, Correa hits one down the right field line thinking that I thought it was a foul ball off the bat. And
Me
all
too.
of a sudden, Renfroe makes a nice running catch on it. And then the next pitch, you got Moniak almost going into the seats and pulling one out defensively. So that, like you said, there are some signs. But again, when we see, some positive signs, then tomorrow night we see, that the ugly side rear its head. I'd love to see some consistency across the board for a week or 2 weeks. You got a 9-game homestand that you're in now. Can you take this 9-game homestand, turn it into 6-3, offense clicking, situational hitting, defense, the bullpen, the bridge in the bullpen? You can get that going before you go back out on the road to take on the White Sox. That's what I'm talking about, is trying to get some momentum. And we said this at the end of April, is how can you gain some momentum going into the month of May? Here we are towards the end of May, trying to get that momentum going into June.
Let me ask you this, Victor, though, because, the Texas Rangers and the Houston Astros, they're playing lights out.
Yeah.
And are the Angels at a point where they can just play Taylor Ward because he had 2 good months last season? Or are you going to play the hot hand? Are you going to go with Moniak?
Me,
that's what I feel.
You're a 500 team. You are a 500 team. The Rangers are scoring boatloads of runs. Can they sustain that all season long? I doubt it, but you never know, right? It's possible. Everything could be clicking at the right time. The schedule could be falling right for them. They're taking advantage of it. And the Astros are, just now starting to get back to full strength, right? Framber Valdez had a terrific start against Oakland. Well, everybody has a terrific start against Oakland. But he had a terrific start. Altuve's back. So, that's a team, obviously, that everyone loved going into the season as the team to win the West. I can't, excuse me, I can't imagine Seattle as consistent, as good as they were last year. And they were fairly consistent. I can't imagine they stay kind of where they're at. You'd think that there's going to be
they're going to get better.
Something's going to happen, right? Based on what they did last year.
Their pitching's too good.
So that division's pretty darn good. So you cannot afford to just keep kicking the can down the road and being a 500 club and be, it's going to turn. It's going to turn. It needs to turn. And you need to shock the system if it's not turning. If that means Jo Adell's got to come up, then you bring up Jo Adell. Listen, to me, I'm sure I've always felt prospects either get you to the promised land or they bring you the players in return via trade that help you get there. That's it. That's what a prospect is. You got to take the emotion out of it, right?
Yeah.
If you, as a front office, believe that Jo Adell, he does not have a future with the Angels, then you got to trade him, move him on. And I'm just bringing up Jo Adell as an example. But if he's going to help you now and you have a spot and he's going to get the consistent at bats to try to help you, then you got to plug and play. I don't care who it is. And Perry has certainly shown the ability to go out there and say, hey, man, I'm going to bring guys up, whether they're ready or not, that I think and feel that they can help us now. To me, there's no more, let's tap the brakes, let's wait, and let's give them a little bit. No, man. I think you have to start pulling the chute now on guys so that you find the right mix so you could start playing some good, consistent baseball. And
to the point of Jo Adell, he clubbed 2 more home runs today, leads all AAA and with 17 home runs. And he's hitting 300. He's got a plus 1,000 OPS. I mean, here's the thing that impresses me the most. I've talked to some people there that with the Salt Lake Bees. He's playing sensational defense, and he's making all the routine plays. He's not making any mental errors. He's making some spectacular plays. He's an athlete. I mean, he came up as a 5-tool player, and maybe it's all coming together. And I'm not saying that's happening for Mickey Moniak either, but it could be. These guys are still young.
Yeah,
they were brought up young. To Mickey Moniak's point, the topic of that point, he struggled in the minors. He never really put up anything substantial in the minors, and then it just clicked. How many of those players have you seen do that over the years? Whether it's the minor leagues or they're pedestrian in the minor leagues, they come up to the major leagues and they're stars. So I think it's too early to give up on these guys. Hunter Renfroe he's only on a 1-year deal. So, I mean, are you going to trade these guys for bullpen help? Which is, you look at our mailbag questions, everything's about trading the farm for bullpen help. And I'm sorry, it's just way too early to mortgage the future for a couple bullpen arms.
For a possibility of a wild card.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to be realistic about all that stuff. And we'll get into the mailbag situation here in just a little bit. But the Jo Adell question and Mickey Moniak, look, you can't, in my humble opinion, you cannot bring up Jo Adell unless he is being called up to play every single day. So for right now, if Moniak is the guy, you're giving him the chance, or you're going to split time with Taylor Ward. If you're going to go with a right-left split, then that's what you do and leave Joe where he's at.
Right.
And so, and that whether it's Joe or anybody else, Trey Cabbage, same thing. If there was a spot for him, if Jared Walsh is going to be out for the rest of the year, and you need some thump at the lineup, do you bring him up?
Absolutely, you do. Yeah,
I agree. I absolutely agree. It's just a matter of those guys. To me, you do them a disservice to the individual and to the team by bringing them up to sit on the bench.
Right.
And so
I think you could get away. I think, Victor, you could get away with not a straight platoon with Moniak and Adell, but Adell's going to start against him. In fact, Adell's been better. Yeah, Adell has been better against right-handed pitching than southpaws. But we talked about Phil Nevin's scheduled days off for Trout and Renfroe. Maybe that's where Moniak, slides in, Adell slides in for Trout or Renfroe. I don't know.
I just think, and just looking big picture, long term, I would rather keep Jo Adell at AAA right now because I don't have a spot for him, right? Because if Taylor Ward's on the roster, Mickey Moniak's on the roster, and that's what you're going to go with right now. Right now, I would keep Joe where he is at. And I say that from the standpoint of continue to build the confidence, continue to build the numbers, continue to rebuild your trade value just in case. Because the last thing I would want to happen is that he comes, platoons,
Right.
all of a sudden looks terrible, makes a mistake defensively, and then people start to think about, well, maybe that's who he is and not the guy at AAA.
Right.
I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying that's how I would view it. I would rather keep him right now where he's at doing what he's doing.
And I should have prefaced it to say, Victor, that Taylor Ward does have an option left.
Right.
So the Angels could demote him to AAA to kind of.
I'm not platooning Joe. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Again, is Mickey Moniak your future? Is Jo Adell your future? And whoever the future is, if it's Jo Adell, right, because you've had him in your system since you drafted him, if he's your future, then you turn over the job to him and let him put his arms around the job and say, I'm taking it. And then next year, if Renfroe walks, you want to move him to right field, whatever you want to do, right? Then you could deal with that next year. But this year, right now, and again, this is just me talking. I don't think it makes any sense whatsoever to bring him up to platoon. If you're bringing him up to play every day or 5 of the 7 days, then cool. I'm good with that.
Yeah,
but
that's fair.
To play one day, sit another, or we're facing 2 right-handers, so Moniak's going to get back-to-back start. To me, I think that's just a waste of time. I'd rather that Joe continue to get his bats and continue to build that confidence as much as possible. At AAA. If you had a spot for him, I'd bring him up right now and play him. You don't have a spot for him, I'd leave him where he's at because you don't know, right? The trade deadline's funny because sometimes you get teams that are desperate for to make a move. And also not just for an eye for this year, but eye for the future. And in Jo Adell, you've got a guy who's rebuilt his value because it was pretty low. It was high, and then COVID happened. That wasn't pretty that year for him, and it just kind of continued to go downward, especially on the defensive side. So that trade value just went straight down. So I think you're in a good position right now. There's no reason to mess with it. So that's just my 2 cents on it. So enough of the Jo Adell, Mickey Moniak pontificating. Let's look ahead. I mean, it's crazy how time flies. We just started talking baseball, right? Let's talk a little bit about the upcoming week. The Boston Red Sox are in town for 3 beginning on Monday night. They've got an off day. The Angels do on Thursday, the 25th, and then the Miami Marlins come to town for a weekend series, and that wraps up the 9-game homestand. The Red Sox have played much better baseball than they did in April. In April, you thought this is a team that's just boy, oh boy, just a bad team, especially not American League East. But now, as you look at the American League East, I think Baltimore is just 2.5 games back of the Rays. And then now you've got the Blue Jays and Yankees going head to head with a little war of the words, and then Blue Jays and the Orioles. I like the American League East; it's a little chippy, and Boston's had a taste of it, and they're going to come in with a little chip on their shoulder as well, going to Southern California.
Yeah, and James Paxton, who would have thought that this guy would start pitching good again? I thought he was toast, but he's looked good. Yeah, when they weren't going well, they handled the Angels. So now here they are, and they're playing better, and we get to face them. So again, you got to just take the series. You got to just 2 out of 3. I mean, 3 out of 4. They gotta. I mean, they saved face against the Orioles, which, I mean, it would not have been good if they lost 3 out of 4 to the Orioles at all. But they're a good team. The Orioles are a good team. Are they the best team in the American League East? I don't think so. I mean, that's the Rays. I think that but, I mean, they're a great team. They have a great bullpen. But I think that you just got to take these next 2 series, and you're at home. So
I agree. That's that 6-3 mindset that I was telling you about. I think with these 3 teams that are at home, that you have at home this year, or this week, I should say, the last week and a half, you got to take care of that business. You go to Chicago to play the White Sox on the road trip that ends the month of May. Then you got a 4-game series at Houston, and the Angels at Houston just hasn't been pretty over the last several years. So it's not going to get any easier as you head into June. It's crazy that we're wrapping up the month of May already. So
It is. I know.
let's get to the mailbag, shall we? Because I know we have a lot of questions, and
We do.
hopefully we have some answers for folks.
Okay, we got a couple that have the same question in. Joyce from Fontana, Greg from Tustin. The question is whether we should be concerned with the Angels pitching coach, Matt Wise, and if he's on the hot seat.
What's your take, big guy?
I mean, there's an issue where last year he couldn't seem to figure some of our own guys out, and Reid Detmers went down to AAA, and in working with the pitching coach in Salt Lake, learned how to throw a slider or improve a slider. And so, there's chirping on social media that why couldn't Matt Wise have taught Reid Detmers to improve his slider? As well as I do that these hitting coaches, the pitching coaches, when things don't go well, they're always going to be the first ones that the fans go after. Mm-hmm. You always forget when a guy throws a gem, right? Or the club's knocks 15, they got 15 hits and 10 runs, and when people are chirping about the hitting coach. So I don't know. I mean, what's your take? I mean, let me ask it this way. Does a good pitching coach and a good hitting coach, are they going to be significant to actually fix everybody, or some people, or some of the hitters, some of the pitchers?
Depends on the coach.
I mean, what is your opinion of Matt Wise? I mean, I'm kind of neutral. I mean, I like to give people a little time.
Yeah.
When I look at Matt Wise, and I'm seeing, some of our players go down or talk to this person or that person, they come back and they're doing better. I have questions whether Matt Wise is the guy.
Sure. Look, coaches in the major league level are it's a thankless job. It really is, because you don't have the so-called gurus of yesteryear, the Mel Stottlemyre pitching coaches that are around forever. The Rudy Jaramillo hitting coach, longtime hitting coach for the Texas Rangers, and still probably doing work with a bunch of hitters privately, right, because he's no longer in baseball. So those seem to have gone by the wayside, and probably because of, everybody's a guru on social media, right? If you look at the last 5 to 10 years with hitting techniques, pitching techniques, pitching labs, hitting labs, everybody and their brother is a guru, and they know how to do it. And I've never been able to understand why you would think that there's only one way of doing something, whether it's pitching or hitting. And I think that's something I think that plagued the Angels from a development standpoint, is the overarching philosophy of pitching or hitting, whatever it was. And here it is. And we want all of our guys to do that. And I think that is the most destructive thing when it comes to the development of players in general. I think the best coaches are the ones that are capable of communicating with each individual. And you could say this at the minor league level, from a player development standpoint, coaches and managers. You have to be able to communicate what it is you want to the individual. And every individual is going to consume information completely differently, right? Chuck, I could think you're one of the smartest guys in the world, and I could talk to you at a physics level, an engineering level, and you'll understand everything that I'm telling you, and you'll be able to digest it and apply it and get a sense of what I'm trying to tell you. Now, if I did that with somebody else, it would just go right over their head, and they won't understand it. And all that does is create this frustration. And so it's being able to take the information that you have at hand, and again, whether it's pitching, hitting, defense, whatever, and being able to, I don't want to say dumb it down or water it down, but communicate it in a manner that is best consumed by each individual that you are responsible for. And that could mean that you have, from a pitching perspective, 13 different ways of communicating the exact same thing, because you got 13 different individuals that are different backgrounds, different likes, different dislikes, different learning mechanisms, and different ways of consuming the information.
Right.
And so I think that's the biggest thing, because at the end of the day, they're all kind of doing the same thing, right? I mean, it's
Right.
We all understand is that being on time, you got to get your foot down from a hitting perspective, and I don't want to get weighed in the weeds about this, but it's what you see that might be going wrong with an individual and how you correct it. Hey, keywords may work for one guy, keywords may not work for another guy. Putting your arm around him and coddling somebody might work for somebody. This guy, you might have to kick in the ass a little bit and chew him out, because that's how he responds. That's what he likes.
Right.
And he gets it that way, the more the intense guy. So as far as it relates to Matt Wise, I'm not there on an everyday basis. So it's difficult for me to understand that. I don't believe that there's a disconnect. Look, guys aren't executing. End of the day, guys aren't executing. Tyler Anderson is not the guy that was last year. Is that Matt Wise's fault? No, it's Tyler Anderson's fault. Reid Detmers, why the third time through the order, why do the numbers go up? Or a couple of innings after he gets off to a great start, why does his ERA jump? Is that Matt Wise's fault? No, it's Matt Wise's responsibility to try to figure out why that is. Now, is that a mental thing? Is it a physical thing, a mechanical thing? Those are all questions that you have to take in and try to dissect with that individual. And so, and it could be Matt. You could replace Matt with any name you want from a coach's perspective, and I'd give you the exact same answer.
Right. And, you talk about, everybody's like, oh, Noah Syndergaard's signed, he signed with the Dodgers. They're going to fix him. Right. It's not the case. He's got an ERA that's bloated this season. And, it's you can't
because everybody sees a radar gun. Everybody sees a radar gun. Like, oh my God, he's touching 98. Who gives a shit? Really? Who does? Can he get outs? I don't care how hard you throw, whether it's Syndergaard or anybody else. Can you get outs consistently? I don't care what someone once was, the ace or the guy that's going to be winning Cy Youngs for the New York Mets forever. What are you today, and what can you get done today? And can you do it on an everyday basis as a bullpen piece? That's it. End of day.
Right.
End of the day. That's all I care about.
And I think we can wrap it up with the Matt Wise question with this. For the same people that are complaining that Matt Wise is the problem this year, are they forgetting how well the pitching staff was last year under Matt Wise's tutelage? Right. You can look at the Detmers thing, but hey, that's why it's a team effort and an organization effort where you put all the minds together, even if it's a AAA pitching coach. Guess what? They're still part of the organization. You all work together. Yep. Some guy may see something that the other guy doesn't see. Anyway, we'll move on. Yep. Let's see. Well, we kind of beat this. Luke from Riverside and Double D from Miami, Florida.
Or Double B.
Or Double B, yeah.
Some mind out of the gutter.
Should the Angels start Moniak over Taylor Ward as the starting left fielder and leadoff hitter? I say yes. I mean, to your point earlier, you go with the hot hand. Paulie is from Templeton, California. It looks like it's time for some new arms in the bullpen. Who in AA or AAA may provide help to the bullpen, and who is the Angels' sixth starter? I say, we've already got three guys. Aaron Loop, he's back. And better than ever. And then Reyes, Moranta, he is what he is. I mean, he's going to have some innings where he walks bases loaded like today. Control's always been his issue. And then Jacob Webb, veteran guy, right? That was with the Braves. I mean, they got Colton Ingram in AA, good lefty arm that they could call up. And then a guy that I've been eyeing is Kenyon Yovan. That guy has been lights out. He's got like a 0.54, I believe, ERA. I mean, he's getting it done there. So he's somebody to look after as well. As far as the sixth spot, here's one for you, Victor. Chase Silseth has had some success out of the bullpen. He's got he's got some velocity. He's got a couple out pitches in terms of his his secondary offerings. Slot him back in the bullpen and slot Jaime Barria into the sixth spot. The guy's been lights out. He's got a 1.96 ERA, 0.96 whip in 23 innings pitch. He's throwing with a little bit more velocity. He's looking good. And again, he's still a guy that's young.
Yeah.
25? I think he's 25.
Yep.
26. So anyway, that's my take on that. Daniel from Australia. Will Perry Minasian be aggressive ahead of the trade deadline this year? I believe so. I believe the Angels are going to do whatever it takes to, make sure that they get to get into the playoffs and that they can retain Shohei Ohtani. End of story.
Yeah. We'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, we'll see.
Let's go because we're running out of time here. Cindy from Newport Beach, California. I think it was asking me, who are some of the nicest players and people you've come across during your time with the Halos? Who are some that were not so nice? Yeah, I'm gonna not answer that one because I've got from an Angels perspective, everybody that I came across. I'm trying to think of the 11 seasons. There really wasn't a player that I can recall was troublesome or standoffish or anything like that. They're all great dudes. They really were. It was nice to see Hank Conger wearing a Twins uniform as the first base coach for the Twins. So Moniak, he's wearing 16. I'm like, that's the Panda's number. And then I see Conger over at first base. I forgot he was coaching first base for them. He was one of the funniest dudes. His impersonation of Albert running is great. And I'll never forget. Was it the swinging bunt where Conger fell as he was running from home plate?
Oh yeah,
home plate to first base. He's just one of those good guys. But they're all. I tell you, I'm being brutally honest here. It's like there wasn't anybody on the Angels in my 11 seasons that I recall being just a pain to deal with or anything like that. They're all awesome dudes. So I'll say all of them have been super nice. Now, there's some where you don't want to talk to after a bad game. Jared Weaver, excuse me. But I love that intensity. So, but there's my answer, Cindy. I hope that works out. If not, you could write me back. Rick from Tampa, Florida. Can you share some funny story from the clubhouse or one of the more wild scenes that you've witnessed when you were with the Angels or Rangers? Funny story from the clubhouse? No, not from the clubhouse because I never went into the clubhouse. I've despised, I guess because I grew up in the game and I was one of those kids that my dad, once we worked out and took BP or whatever, my dad would always say, all right, shower up. It's time to go upstairs because we're getting ready to go to work. So I always had that in my mindset as a non-player or coach. The clubhouse is the player's domain. I had no business. There's nothing I needed in the clubhouse that I couldn't get when they walked out for batting practice or stretch in the dugout. So if I had a question or something come up, I always got it out there. I'd never, whether it's a visiting clubhouse or and this is with the Angels, visiting clubhouse or the Angels clubhouse. When I was on radio with the Rangers, I didn't have a choice but to go in there because I had a radio interview segment that I had to get a player or a coach. And I hated doing it in the clubhouse. I'd usually go in, and if I hadn't set it up the night before, I'd go in and set it up real quick. And, hey, can we go outside in the hallway and do it? And I would never go back in there. So that was always my take on that. As far as wildest scenes, actually the Rangers and Angels. It was there was a game one night where Gerald Laird and I think Adam Kennedy were jawing at each other. Was it Adam Kennedy? Who was it? Anyways, they were. I think it was AK. They were jawing at each other in a plate, and I was with the Rangers at the time. And the next day, during batting practice, the Angels take a BP. The Rangers came out, and this was at Angel Stadium, and they were stretching. And one of them, I think whoever it was, came over and started jawing. And there was a melee, a fight, if you will, during batting practice between the Angels and the Rangers right by the on-deck circle of the visiting first base side. So, and I happened to be down on the warning track, and it's like it just happened right there in front of me. And it was just the craziest thing I'd ever seen, a bench clearing PP brawl. So, and I think Brian Jordan at the time was with the Rangers because I think he tried to diffuse it. But that was one of the wildest. Vincent in Hollywood, California. How come we're not seeing enough bunts, hit and run, and stolen bases with the Angels this season? Well, that's a managerial thing. It's really a product of your roster, really. I mean, do you have guys that can bunt? Do you have guys that can hit and run or feel comfortable hitting and running with? And I think it all looks at the circumstances. It appears as if they're more content as the roster is built to be more of a power type. Kind of sit back and hope for the extra base hit or the home run, as opposed to trying to manufacture runs. So, when it comes to manufacturing runs, you've got to have the personnel to be able to do it. That's whether it's the Angels or anybody, really. I mean, I think we touched on in episode 4 about Scioscia back in the day. He had those guys, right? He had the multiple switch hitters, the guys that can run, the guys that can bunt, the first to third. You just always saw that because you had the personnel, and that's how he liked to play the game. So I think it's just a byproduct of what it is today. Matthew from New York. Why is Shohei Ohtani moved on from his splitter, which was an effective pitch for him, to the slider, not sweeper. Matthew from New York, which seems to be getting crushed this season? Well, I think he's still trying to throw the splitter. I think he obviously tried to throw the splitter on Sunday against the Minnesota Twins. It's a feel pitch, man. It's, if you think about a splitter, it's not the easiest thing in the world. When you lose command of it, it's kind of a release point thing. Sometimes your wrist gets underneath it, ball slips out. And so I think he's still trying to work on it. It seems as if the Angels have said, hey, man, you're fine. That's your pitch. Go for it. Because especially having had Tommy John surgery, I would imagine a lot of organizations with non-Shohei type players would say, hey, let's 86 the splitter just based on the injury history that you've had. But it'll come around. It's a field pitch. It's not like his other stuff sucks. Like I said, he's 98, 99 with a fastball, a wicked slider. He also has a curveball. So I'm not worried about Shohei Ohtani. So there's our mailbag for the day, Chuck. How'd I do?
Good. I think we got to everybody's questions. We had a lot of questions that, were railing on Mike Trout, and, he's come around. I mean, and it's Mike Trout. I mean, he makes adjustments. And right. Fire Phil Nevin and, and trade Ohtani, and what can we get for trade Ohtani? We're not talking about trading Ohtani yet. I'm sorry. I mean, this is episode 5. We're not even out of the month of May yet.
No, not yet.
No.
That's gonna do it for us. We really appreciate you listening to the podcast. This is episode number 5. I know Jeff would have loved to have been here, but unfortunately he had family things to take care of, and it's good that he has family around him in this weekend in Colorado. Next week, it is Memorial Day weekend. So episode 6, we will record that on Memorial Day in the evening and then release it that night. So I just wanted to give everybody the heads up, but we are planning on recording one next weekend, Memorial Day weekend. So for Jeff Stoddart, who's not here, and Chuck Richter and Victor Rojas, we thank you for listening and watching the Angels Win podcast. Remember, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, and Amazon, as well as our YouTube channel. Chuck, nice job, brother.
Another good episode.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great one.
Thank you for listening to the Angels Win podcast with Victor Rojas, Chuck Richter, and Jeff Stoddart. Go Halos and drive home safely.
Say goodbye. Daddy, look at me. Say goodbye. Now I'm finally free.